Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's ranking all of the episodes of Season 4. In this video, I rank all of the episodes of Season 4 of Star Trek The Next Generation in order from my least favorite to my favorite episode of the season. This is in conclusion of just me covering Season 4 of The Next Generation. Something I do at the end of each season, which I'm having a lot of fun and I look forward to these videos. And I did want to first point out that yes, this is in fact Ethan Peck and Ensign Mount on my shirt. I know you can't see it very well normally. But anywho, not here to talk about Strange New Worlds, though. I'm here to talk about Next Gen. Getting into Season 4. So, I talked about, I did my rankings for Season 1, 2, and 3 of Next Generation. Season 1, so just to refresh, a negative rating, I give every episode a rating between 1 and 10. A negative rating is 1 through 5, a positive rating 6 through 10, and varies to various degrees. And for Season 1, crazy motherfucker, what's he doing? Anyway, Season 1, I gave all the episodes except for the top 10 a negative rating. Only the top 10 got a positive rating for Season 2. Half the episodes of the season got a positive and half the episodes got a negative. Sorry, I'm just looking at my cats climbing the cat tree. Anyway, they're going crazy. Anyway, Season 3 had no negative rating episodes whatsoever. It was all positive to varying degrees. And Season 4, as it turns out, has 9 negative rating, and I guess that would make it 16 positive. So definitely skews towards the positive a lot more in Seasons 1 and 2, but not as not like Season 3 that is all positive, which I've mentioned. Season 3 is going to be the only season any Star Trek show which ever happens where that ever happens. So I called it once my favorite season of all of Star Trek, which I probably stand behind. I mean, maybe not modern Trek, but that doesn't count because they have shorter seasons. Anyway, although I don't know if there's any, maybe Strange New Worlds Season 1 might be all positive too, actually. Anyway, shorter seasons, so it doesn't count. So Season 4, I think, runs the gambit of all of the different ratings a lot more than the previous seasons. 1 and 2, I mean, they kind of ran the gambit, but 1 only went up to rating number 8 was the highest, and Season 2 rating number 9 was the highest, and there was only 1 9. Whereas this season, and I think they was missing a 5 or rating or 4 rating in one of those seasons too. Season 3 was the worst because the vast majority of there were no 1 through 5, so it wasn't representative of those. That's what I mean by worst. Obviously, this is the best, but I mean as far as representing all the different ratings, it was the worst. The vast majority of episodes in Season 3 were either 7 or an 8. But Season 4 has a representation of every rating except for a 2. There's no 2s in here, and there's only 1, to be fair, but there's several of all the other ratings, so I think it's more of a spectrum, more representative of all the different ratings. But as I said, the majority of them are positive rather than negative. But I don't know. I talked about how Season 4 was definitely a step down from Season 3, which is a different opinion than what the producers and writers of the show had. In fact, I watched another channel that said they thought that Season 3 which is what Michael Piller said, that the season 3 had great episodes and terrible episodes, and it was sort of more of a mix, where season 4 was right down the middle. And I think the exact opposite. I think that season 3 was more of down the middle, or as they're all positive episodes, so maybe down the middle is not the correct way, but it's more of a consistent of that 7. That's why the majority of the episodes in that season are a 7 or an 8. It's that consistent, like, good, but not as many great episodes. I think season 4 has more great episodes than season 3 does, but it also has more bad episodes. So in other words, I think the exact opposite, that there's more polar extremes in season 4 than there was in season 3. Anyway, that's just my humble. So I mentioned before, when I did the other videos on the end of the season, that I averaged out my rating for every episode of the season to come up with an average rating for the season. So your average episode is what the rating would be. I don't think it's entirely accurate, but it is still interesting to look at. So season 1, the average was 4.76. And season 2, the average was 4.86, so negative rating, but close to a 5, which is still a negative rating. And for season 3, the average was a 7.8, quite a positive rating average. But for season 4, the average is 6.76. So still much better than the first 2 seasons, but not as good as the 3rd season. So that actually would be fair. Kind of would represent how I feel about season 4. So we'll go ahead and jump in to my top 25, or ranking the 25 episodes of season 4, as I normally do. As I said, I give every episode of the season a rating between 1 and 10. So, of course, they're bunched in order, since I'm going in order from my least favorite to my favorites. So every time before I get to a certain rating, card will flash up on the screen to tell you what the following episodes I'm about to talk about are rated between 1 and 10. So let's get started. Coming in at number 25, and thus least favorite episode of season 4, the only episode I have rated a 1, and that is The Loss. And this episode is a total loss. It loses because it's just about Counselor Troi becoming insufferable because she loses her privilege, her special superpower that no one else has, and she's just like everyone else now, and that apparently is the worst thing ever. So much so that she has to treat all of her friends and colleagues like absolute shit. And she cuts out Picard cuts him off when he's ready to give a great speech. And so that is absolutely unforgivable. And this episode is insufferable and so hard to watch, is that the throwaway B-plot about some stupid 2-dimensional creatures is refreshing compared to the main plot, which is just grating on the nerves. This was in my top 25 worst episodes of the entire Star Trek franchise, so it tells you how poorly I think of this episode. So as I mentioned, there are no 2 rated episodes, so we jump to the 3 rated episodes and get into my number 24, second least favorite episode of the season, and that is Final Mission. So Wesley's final episode, and they have him trouncing through the desert, which is really boring, with Captain Picard and some moron who obviously fucks up at every turn. He's probably a drunk too. Anyway, he's drinking alcohol in the middle of the desert when they don't have any water. Like, how can no one can be that stupid? Anyway, so apparently there's like these beings that created a magical fountain and put like a force field that kills people in the middle of the desert. Why the fuck would they do any of that? It doesn't make any sense, and it's never explained. It's just, oh well, it's just fucking there, I guess. And it has a throwaway B plot that's complete nonsense and a waste of time, and just there to give it an excuse of why the Enterprise can't rescue Picard and Wesley in time. It is boring, stupid, but I give it a 3 rather than 2 or 1 because some of the scenes between Picard and Wesley were adequate. They were interesting, but not good enough to give this a positive rating. So next we will get into my number 23, which is In Theory. And I'm sorry, I gotta make this joke again. This episode is a good episode in theory, but in practice it sucks. It starts out fairly good, and I think the concept of Data trying to, getting into a relationship is very interesting, and I really wanted them to do this. And it starts out well, and it has all the piece building blocks, and it explores Data, this woman having a crush on him and how he would react to that and get advice from the friends. But then in the second half of the episode, it proceeds to do the worst writing for Data in the entire show. Like, Data had never been written so poorly. They completely destroy his character. They revert him back to season 1 Data, worse in my opinion, where he's an idiot, he's obtuse, and doesn't understand the very simplest of human interactions, which absolutely positively is not how he's been described. It portrays him as a stupid robot who doesn't understand humans at all and has absolutely zero human attributes, which is not how he's been portrayed before. In the best episodes, ones written by Melinda Snodgrass, who knows how to write for him properly, like episodes like The Offspring, The Measure of Man, Instance of Command. They show that he has human aspects, but they're just come out in the android way, which is how an episode about a relationship should have been portrayed, but they were too worried about smashing that fucking reset button, making sure they broke up by the end of the episode, so they had to destroy his character in order to do that. Coming in at number 22 is The Host. The Host with the Most. This is the episode with the Trill, which they should have called this species something totally different in Deep Space Nine, because it is a totally different race. It is not the race that appears in this episode. But I guess the only similarity is that there is a creature. It's not even a symbiont. It's more of a parasite. In DS9, it's a symbiont. Here, they call it a symbiont, but it's a parasite because the symbiont is in unison with the body, where parasites invades it and takes over, which is what this thing does. But anyway, as it features a really shit romance between Beverly Crusher and the symbiont, and it completely mishandles it. It doesn't sell me on it. I don't buy this romance at all. Therefore, any of the drama that this episode tries to execute just comes off as fake and silly and melodrama, and I just don't buy it at all. I find the B plot with the war that's breaking out more interesting, but they resolve that off screen. Next, we'll get into my number 21, which is Identity Crisis. I know some people really like this episode. I never did. I find it kind of boring. Again, it has a character shows up who's apparently a longtime friend of Geordi, and their best friend. The whole episode's based on the strength of their relationship. In fact, that is how the crisis of the episode is resolved, by showing how strong their friendship is. And I don't know who the fuck this is. They don't do a very good job of introducing her. They don't do a very good job of introducing her friendship with Geordi. I'd never buy it. I don't care about it. And the whole thing with Geordi becoming this weird gecko, invisible with predator power things. I mean, it's an interesting concept that they take over these people and they force them to instinctively want to return home. They turn into these weird creatures that apparently act only on instinct, yet they still know how to do things like operate a transporter and even like override a blockout on the transporter and fly a shuttlecraft. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. I just find this episode boring, and I don't care how people try to justify it. I just hate the way that it takes all the other people a really long time to transform, but Geordi sneezes and he's instantly a gecko. It's the Geico gecko. Coming in at number 20 is Galaxy's Child. Now, the only reason why this episode is not lower on my list is because I like the B-plot. I think actually the B-plot is quite powerful, and how there's an alien creature in space and they accidentally kill it, and how mortified Picard is. Like, Patrick Stewart's performance in that moment is amazing, and it actually got me to tear up a bit, and then the baby attaching itself to the Enterprise and them like trying to get rid of it but without killing it, and there's these other aliens coming. Like, that was good. I actually liked the B plot. The A plot is shit. The A plot is so bad. If it wasn't for that B plot, this would be like towards the bottom of my list, be like a 2, because it shows Geordi LaForge gaslighting the real Leah Brahms. First of all, she comes on board and acts completely out of character and is a total dickhead to him when she is supposed to be like a fan of his work. That's what Picard says, but she shows up and like berates him at every turn. But then Geordi like does some really inappropriate sexual harassment, like invites her to a work meeting, but then proceeds to dress it up like a romantic dinner and hits on her hard out. And then when she discovers that he had violated her privacy by making out with a holographic version of her, he proceeds to yell at her and gaslight her and tell her that she's a mean person. And then at the end of the episode, she apologizes to him. Yeah, I know that's not what this episode tried to do. It's just bad writing. It is bad writing. Coming in at number 19 is The Nth Degree. This episode's kind of boring. I didn't really care about it. It's kind of interesting seeing that Barclay has progressed since his last appearance, and I'm not that crazy about Barclay either. And so the episode just shows him, like, getting smart and being a great actor and hitting on Troy very successfully. But that's the only interesting part. It then proceeds, he then proceeds to tie himself to the Enterprise and wants to do this thing. And Picard apparently is so upset of the fact that Barclay took command away from him, he's willing to fucking kill him just to get command of the Enterprise back, even though the Enterprise is not in any danger as far as he knows. So why the fuck is he willing to kill Barclay? That's fucked up. But as it turns out, Picard was overreacting. This is a good thing he didn't succeed in killing Barclay, because all that's happening is Barclay is trying to take the ship to the other side of the galaxy to meet these lazy-ass aliens who are too fucking lazy to go out and explore space, so they just force people to come to them. God damn, those lazy motherfuckers. Next, we'll get into my number 18, which is Brothers. So I really liked this episode in the past, and I used to give it really high ratings, but then I started to realize the whole thing about Data taking over the Enterprise is a huge plot hole, and it really is a flaw, and really destroys Data's character, because every time they leave Data in charge of the Enterprise or the bridge or anything like that in the future, you think, this is a malfunctioned android who could take over the ship and lock everyone out at any time he pleases. And I do buy that Data would be that awesome, but I don't buy that the security on the Enterprise would be that shit. That that would just all he needs to do is emulate Picard's voice in order to take it over. That's some shitty fucking security, if you ask me. And why the hell would Dr. Soong make him do this in the first place? And he hides it from him too. Why is he doing that? That doesn't make any sense. None of it makes sense. It's just contrived nonsense to get Data to Soong. Now, the scenes with Data, Soong, and Lore are good, and which is why I previously liked the episode, but they needed a better function. They just did all this contrived nonsense just so they could have a threat. Try doing this episode without a fucking threat. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 17, which is Cupid. This episode's okay. I mean, it's silly. It's a Robin Hood nonsense. I actually liked the stuff with Picard and Vosh at the start of the episode. I think it was good character stuff, but the Robin Hood stuff came out of nowhere and was really unnecessary. There were other avenues in which they could have taken this episode. Even with Q, you keep Q in there, that's fine. But the Robin Hood stuff was just out of nowhere. Now, it was funny, I will grant you, with Worf saying, "I'm not a married man," and whatnot, but those jokes were all contrived and kind of out of character anyway. So, next we get to number 16, which is Suddenly Human. It's suddenly human, born to make mistakes. Anyway, this episode's okay. It's, some things are quite powerful and really done well. Character stories like, what's his name? Jeremiah was his human name. His name is like Jono or something. Anyway, Jono and the trauma that he's expressing, and just exploring the aspect of someone raised by aliens, trying to rediscover being human, is done well. But the problem is done in a very cliche way, with like him blasting rock music that Picard is like, "Oh, turn this shit off, get off my lawn," and just the stupid way that Picard like handles the situation, how they like try to trick him into wanting to stay, which is quite devious of them. So it doesn't explore this in the best way, but it's okay. Anyway, next we'll get to my number 15, which is Remember Me. So this episode I've gone back and forth on. I used to love it, then I hated it, and now it's in the middle. It's a 6 for me. And it's like, so it's an interesting idea that the crew keeps disappearing. But I think the end of the second half of this episode was mishandled. We get lots of scenes with Beverly talking to herself, which is actually quite boring. And not particularly acted or written well, for that matter. And I like the stuff with the Traveler, but once they revealed the what was really going on, they should have just stayed with Wesley and the Traveler, and then for the rest of the episode, my humble opinion, because the stuff with Beverly talking to herself was just garbage. So, again, okay episode, I guess. And it was really silly. That's why I used to hate this episode, because the scenes where she's like running in the void chasing her, it just looks so ridiculous. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 14, which is First Contact, the episode, obviously. The season 4 episode, not the movie that came out like several years, 5 years later or whatever. Yeah, I called this episode overrated because I think a lot of people gave this quite high of a rating. I saw a lot of 8 and 9s floating around. I give it a 6. Because I think I was never really that invested in the episode, because I think the way it started, it felt like it was starting halfway through the story. And so I didn't really care about these aliens or what was going on. A lot of people think, oh, it's so cool that they showed it from the aliens' perspective. And I'm thinking, not really, because they kind of sacrificed having a complete story in order to do so. I mean, show it from their perspective if you like, but give us a freaking beginning instead of tossing us into the story halfway through. And even then, it was just okay. Like, I don't know. Like, the whole thing with Lilith from Cheers, like, forcing Riker to have sex with her in order to save his life was played for laughs, was actually quite, creepy, but whatever. Next, we get to my number 13, which is Devil's Due. The episode I've probably seen the most, was most sick of out of any Next Generation episode, but a fairly good one. It's an interesting character study for Data, as it starts out with him studying Scrooge and the aspect of fear, and then they get into a situation where people on the planet are controlled by fear. And, they have this con woman who's trying to take over the planet by pretending to be the devil, and Picard sees right through her and tries to expose her, but then is constantly thwarted. And so it's really interesting. There's some funny moments, some interesting moments. I love how Picard manages to steal her powers at the end to prove she's a fraud. That's a very great ending. But she had a crush on Picard. In fact, was being stupid and risked everything that she managed to steal just so she could get Picard to become her sex slave. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really like that, and sometimes I didn't like her character, but it was alright. It was a decent episode. So next we'll get to number 12, which is Night Terrors. Eyes in the dark. One moon circles. I like this episode apparently a lot better than a lot of people do. Some people, including some people attached with the show, thought it was the worst episode of the season. I don't think it's even close to being the worst episode of the season. I mean, fucking The Lost exists. Hello. But I thought it was quite creepy. It was one of the more effective horror episodes whenever I do like a top 10 of horror or Halloween or creepy episodes of Star Trek. This always makes it. Especially everyone always points to, and for good reason, the scene where all the corpses sit up in the morgue when Crusher's there. That is a creepy ass fucking scene. I think overall it has a very good vibe of creepiness, and I do like that the big reveal of that these aliens who are preventing people from reaching REM sleep are trying to communicate with Troy a way to get out of the little thingy that they're stuck in. So I thought it was pretty clever. Not, the best episode in the world. It has that stupid scene in the bar where Guinan shoots the crappy phaser up in the air because the guys are acting like idiots, which I thought was dumb. But, yeah, it's a decent enough episode. I do like it. So next we get into my number 11, which is A Legacy. So this is the one where they meet Tasha Yar's sister, Ashara Yar, who is all unlike Tasha, who wanted to leave the colony she was from. Ashara is all for the colony. She's joined up with one of the factions, and she works with the Enterprise crew to get some hostages back, but really she's doing it for her own purposes to try to help her side defeat the other side, and so she betrays their trust, and she forms a relationship with Data in particular, who feels, and you can tell, and again, this is a well-written episode for Data, unlike the fucking In Theory, where you can tell that he is betrayed in his own android way. He feels betrayed, and I think the way they play that is brilliant. Now, is it the best episode ever? No. It's Ashara Yar actor is not that great, even though she looks like Linda Hamilton. And they look, the way these aliens look are like very 80s. But anyway, can't hold that against them, but other parts are just kind of cheesy. And where the fuck is Troy? Why are her powers failing here where she couldn't detect the obvious deception coming from Ashara Yar? But anyway. So now getting into my top 10, starting with the 8 rated episodes, so getting up there in quality episodes. We'll start with my number 10, which is Family. Great character story. I love how they followed up with the emotional consequences to Picard from The Best of Both Worlds. And they deal with the emotional consequences for Worf with his discommodation. We meet his foster parents, which is very fascinating. It's something I wish they explored more throughout the show, that is. And so the scenes with, I don't think this episode is like amazing. I've heard some people put this in their top 10 with the whole show, which I wouldn't do, but because I think some of the stuff with Robert and Picard is a little bit boring on the planet, and Robert is a bit of obvious antagonist. Like, they kind of contrived writing a little bit to make him be like an asshole, be like, cancel the parade in your faith. But I love the ending where, they mud wrestle and then Picard breaks down crying about the Borg, and Robert is like, hits it to him. It's like, look, you got to figure out what you want to do. It was a good character story, a little bit of contrivance in there, but a powerful character story. So, next we'll get into my number 9, which is Data's Day. Probably putting this episode higher than I had in the past. I did think it was a really interesting Data episode that explores what his day would be, a day in a life. I think that was a fascinating aspect of Data. I think it's what they did, where they had a plot of a Vulcan ambassador who wants to meet with the Romulans, turning out to be a Romulan spy. That was an interesting plot, and some people didn't like it or said that it should have been its own episode, but I disagree. I actually thought it was fascinating the way that we only got it from Data's perspective. I think it was interesting to get an interesting story like that from Data's perspective, because they could have done some bullshit and unbelievable bullshit, which they didn't, and I appreciate that. And we also get other aspects of Data's Day with Keiko. They introduced Keiko, who marries Miles in her first appearance, which was very fascinating, and Data being like good friends with Keiko, and how he handles the situation where their marriage is like falling apart and he's not sure how to handle it, and he learns how to dance from Dr. Crusher. I think it's all interesting. Now, they did do some shady writing for Data in the start where he doesn't realize that Keiko calling off the wedding might not be the best news for Miles, which is a bit bad writing for Data, but for the most part, I think they handle Data's character really well in this episode. And his conclusion at the end, where he's writing a letter to Commander Maddox, and he's like, oh, yes, I realize. And again, this is great writing for Data, something that shows that he's beyond human. And he shows, I realize that love is important. It shows that he's capable of love, regardless of what he says. So fuck Enthir, I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on that. Anyway, we then come to my number 8, which is Redemption. Parts 1 and 2, I'm continuing the tradition I started in the previous year, where if there's a 2-parter at the end of the season, where first part's in one season and the other part is in the next season, I count them both as one and put them in the part that part 1 is in. In this case, it's Redemption, which part 1 was definitely a lot better than part 2. Part 2 had too many storylines and weren't able to do justice to any of them, so it wasn't a very good conclusion, which is why they only get an 8. Because part 1 starts off very good. It's a very interesting concept of a Klingon civil war. It's something they've been teasing for a couple of years, and we learn a lot more about the Klingon culture. We get to see Gowron. Worf, resigns his commission, but then changes his mind and wants to come back. So yeah, it's very fun. A lot of good, interesting aspects. But then, yes, they have thrown it away with having this cliffhanger about Sela, Tasha Yar's daughter, being a Romulan. that was really dumb. It kind of ruins the episode. But still an 8, because it's still a good episode. There's still a lot of good aspects of the Klingon Civil War and Kurn and Gowron and all that still works. So next we get into my number 7, which is Future Imperfect. A personal favorite of mine, an episode that I used to absolutely love when I first got into Star Trek, and I still like it. I still appreciate this episode a lot. It shows a possible future for Riker, but it turns out just to be Romulan trap, but then the Romulan trap turns out that it actually was just some lonely alien who wants some company. And I thought that was kind of cute. I thought that was kind of nice, and I think the twists and turns in the episode really work. I like seeing this possible future and how Riker would behave in it, and yeah, so I always like this episode. I think it's a lot of fun. So getting into my 9 episodes, so getting into nitty gritty of my favorite episodes of the season, we'll start with my number 6, which is Half a Life. Not to be confused with Get a Life. That was a stupid sitcom from the early 90s. But anyway, Half a Life. Best Lwaxana Troi episode in the franchise, bar none, period, full stop, end of sentence. Because it shows her, it uses her well. It shows her actually falling in love with someone who fucking reciprocates for once, god damn it. And why not? I mean, she has a lot to offer a potential mate, and I think the romance was sold well. It really works, and then we get the moral dilemma that is really powerful of this alien race who has a tradition of whenever you reach the age of 60, you're expected to kill yourself in a ritual suicide that is woven into their culture, so much so that when he tries to refuse to do it, they're willing to attack the Enterprise, and they refuse to listen to him when he's trying to save their whole world. Now, I think this species deserves to die for what they did, but that is just my humble little opinion. But it was still a very powerful episode, and the emotional scenes with Lwaxana really work. It is by far easily, like so easily, the best use of Lwaxana. And yeah, and the ending where she agrees to, because he realized that he has to go down and kill himself, and she agrees to go down with him because she wants to be there as one of his loved ones. That was touching. Like, it brings tears to my eyes. It's a really powerful episode. So next we get into my number 5, which is The Wounded. Another really powerful episode, the introduction of the Cardassians with Mark Alamo playing the main one, so that's always a lot of fun. And you have the Warden from Shawshank Redemption going around killing Cardassians, and who is a former captain of Miles O'Brien, who has a personal attachment to him, plus Miles O'Brien is going around being a bigot to the Cardassians. So it deals with really powerful issues of prejudice and PTSD and just the dealing with horrors of past wars, and it does it very well. You get some amazing scenes with Picard, but the ending scene where Miles talks Captain Maxwell down by singing that song was so subtle, it's so powerful, it's such a good scene, it's such a great emotional subtle way to end the episode. It is an absolutely amazing episode. So coming in at number 4, getting into my 10 rated episodes, 4 of them, and number 4, I can't believe is only number 4, and I kept trying to rearrange to make this higher, but I couldn't because the other ones I liked slightly better, and I always consider this one of my favorite episodes of the entire show, top 20 easily, and then why is it only number 4 in my season 4? I guess it goes to show you how amazing these top episodes of season 4 are. Anyway, it's The Drumhead. A fan favorite episode, and for very good reason, as has featured some of the best Picard speeches in the entire show. It has very powerful commentary about McCarthyism, which becomes even more relevant after the episode was made than it was when it was made, which is pretty powerful. If you think about it, I guess it just goes to show that we just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. But I love the really suspenseful by having a bottle show where they didn't spend that much money on this episode, and they managed to get something so riveting, so suspenseful, and that to me is a lot more impressive when they can do these suspenseful episodes just by having several people in the room talking. And the moral is just so powerful, and I love the character story Worf goes through in this episode as well, as he's all on board with the witch hunt at first until Picard has to make him see just how fucked up it is of what she's doing, and he's able to do it, and he's able to outwit her by quoting her father back to her and have her freak out and reveal herself for the fraud that she is. And so it's a powerful episode. Very good episode. I can't believe it's only my number 4, but here we are. Anyway, we'll get to my number 3, which is, and this is tough. This was tough to put this above Drumhead, but it slightly makes it, maybe for nostalgia purposes, but it's Clues. I think this is one of the best mystery episodes of the entire show. The way you just get clue after clue after clue, and I think the holodeck sequence with Dixon Hill and Gloria from Cleveland is an awesome way to set up the theme of the episode. It's one of the best sort of holodeck opening things that the show's ever done, in my opinion. And mainly we get this Data's odd behavior, him acting very strangely, and it gets to the point where he's obviously lying, and you have no idea why. And the big reveal when this alien takes over Troy's body and goes, "The plan has failed," is such a powerful ending and such a powerful way when Data finally reveals why he's been lying the whole time. Is Picard's like, "Who gave you that order?" He's like, "You did, sir." Dun dun dun. And again, some of the best music in the entire show as well. Just the subtle way they get across all these things, especially the ending scene where they do the whole wormhole thing again, wipe everyone's memory again. This time they get rid of all the clues, and they have the scene at the end where they zoom in on Data, and it looks like he's kind of half smiling, and they play this music that reveals that everything's good, a very subtle way of showing that Data is happy that it all turned out. It's so good, so good. Anyway, we'll get to my number 2. This is an episode last time when I did my season by season review, I gave this episode a 9, so it's gone up to a 10, and not only that, it's gone up to my second favorite of season 4. In fact, very close to wanting to put this in my top 25 of the entire franchise. I think this would definitely make my top 50, and that is The Mind's Eye. I think a lot of it, and I come to love this episode more and more with age, because at first I never didn't like this episode. I always liked it, but it was never one of my favorites. I always thought of it as another decent, good Romulan episode. But the more I watch it, and especially after going through film school and whatnot, and appreciating the craft of filmmaking is probably one of the best that the show's ever done in this episode. The music, the editing, the acting, the cinematography, just everything works in junction. It just got it right. It just got it so right. And the story is pretty simple about, a Manchurian candidate themed episode where Geordi's brainwashed to start a war between the Klingons and the Federation by the Romulans, who want to destroy, of course, the alliance between the Federation and the Klingons. And that's it's simplistic, but it's interesting. And the way it's executed is what makes it so good. The musicals, this guy is easily one of the best musical scores in the entire show. In fact, I had it at my number 2 when I did my soundtrack countdown. It's just so good, and it's so subtle and nuanced. And you get some really quotable stuff in this episode, like Picard saying, or now the Klingon saying to Picard, "You speak the lies of a Turk." And it's just, and then like when Data puts it all together at the end, right before Geordi's about to kill the Klingon governor, and he's like putting it together, it's so fucking good. It's so suspenseful, and the music and the way it's shot is freaking amazing. So no, it's a really good episode. So now we get into my number one favorite episode of season 4, and that is Reunion. Now, this episode I did have in my top 25 favorite episodes of the entire franchise. It was my number 24. I did a live stream. I believe it was with Alyssa and Darren on this episode, and we dissected. And I think, to me, this is the best out of the Worf discommendation story arc. As it deals with K'Ehleyr coming on board and revealing that they have a son together, and Worf sort of dealing with that, refusing to become, she wants to get married, but he refuses because of his dishonor, and so that inspires her to go and try to investigate why he was discombobulated, and this leads her to rubbing the wrong people the wrong way, and Doris kills her, and Doris, then Worf goes on board and kills Doris, and this awesome epic fight, which is just so amazing. And I think Michael Dorn's acting in this episode is probably the best he's done in the whole series. Like, particularly the ending scene where Picard's dressing him down, and you can tell like that he's trying to be stoic, and this is after K'Ehleyr died too, and he's trying to like be like stoic and strong Klingon, but you can see like tears welling up in his eyes, and you can see that his voice cracks a little bit, so he gives away just how broken he is. It's an amazing performance. I love those like really subtle performances. It's so good. But then you also get the introduction of Gowron. It's the first episode that Gowron with his big eyes, "You will die slowly, Dora." Like, that is so good. That is so amazing. And the whole like who's going to become the next leader and who's conspiring with the Romulans, it all works. It's an amazing episode. So that is, and god damn it, the scene where K'Ehleyr died is like so like powerful. It brings me to tears every time. Such a powerful ending. So sad. Anyway, that is my number one favorite episode of season 4. So that is it for my video on ranking all of the episodes of season 4. Thank you so much for watching. Now, on to season 5. So, let me just say what's coming up next on my channel. Wednesday, I'll be over on Patreon to do Revisited for Darmok, revisiting my review for Darmok for my Patreon supporters, and on Thursday to cover the latest episode of Discovery. Saturday, be back here with a new public video, a review for Ensign Ro, and then the following Monday, remain here for a review of Silicon Avatar. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover The Next Generation and many more Star Trek videos and many more videos and many other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.